that we found came through safe-to-say tips. One of the best things, or I think one of the things that I feel most comfortable with, the safe-to-say tips, is often they're made by students. And that goes to show that there are students out there who look at this and see this as something bad, something that's not good, something they don't want in their school. Safe to say is probably one of our most proactive measures that we have with this. As far as reactive measures and how do we respond to children who have that, when we look at the vaping, particularly we'll look at the nicotine. One of the pieces we really want to make sure is that we're not just putting checks in the boxes. There was a time where all of a sudden we would send them off to classes. The other thing that we really feel, or we're starting to talk a lot about, is students don't stop doing something because they go to a class. Students stop doing something because of the relationship they have with the person who wants them to stop. Whether that be a parent, a teacher, a student, an administrator, or whatever the case may be. So really, if you hear about it, and I know Mrs. Tennant spoke to it, when we find someone, and I'm going to say smoking slash vaping, because it's different if it's THC, right? It's still a vape, but now we're talking about a different approach. If it's smoking slash nicotine slash vaping, the first thing we do is we sit with them, and we talk to them, we bring in the nurse. And when I say we, I'm talking about the house principals. We sit down and we have conversations with them. There's an educational component to it, and it depends on the relationship that you have with the student, it depends on who that student is, what that educational component could be. Sometimes it's just something that student has to go do and then come back and sit and have lunch with the house principal again and talk about that assignment together. It's about building a relationship. When it happens a second time, if it happens a second time, there's a little bit more formality to it. And mind you, in all these situations, first, second, third, there's additional consequences needed and there's parent communication. That's always there. The second time it happens is, now there's something a little bit more formal. We're working with our SAT team. Joe talked about that. And we're looking at resources in the district or in the area regarding nicotine cessation. And we're going to put basically a buffet or a contract together. We sit down at the table with parents and students and we say, look, this is your second time. We need you to pick one of these and we need you to finish it by such and such a date. And if you don't, additional consequences. Now we're bringing the parents into it. We're kind of inconveniencing them a little bit. We're making it a little bit more formal. And all of this is continuing to be facilitated by the house principal who started at the very beginning with a conversation with the student. This idea that somebody through this process isn't there just to drop the hammer, but they're there because they care and they want you to stop. So the whole start of that was really based on forming relationships and having conversations. Because we know we can tell them it's bad till we're blue in the face, and they really don't care unless they care about you. And that's what we're trying to really change with that. Now when it goes to the THC, if we find the vape and there's THC oil in it, we send it out and we get it tested and it comes back, that goes to a policy violations committee. In the past, if you ended up going to a policy violations committee, you just came in and you had 45 days placement somewhere else. Talk about something that really goes to tell you we don't care about you. You made a mistake and now we're sending you away for 45 days. So the policy violation, while what you did is part of it, who you are is the bigger piece of it. We bring in Joe, we bring in special education supervisors, we bring in counselors, we bring in a member from the SAC team, and we look at what the student did and we look at who the student is. And we make those decisions. And we have those conversations with students and with parents. We're not simply saying to somebody, you're doing something bad and we're going to hammer you until you stop it. We're trying to tell them you're making a mistake and we care about you and we want you to stop it. I know it sounds hokey, but the reality of it is that is going to get children to stop when there is a relationship involved. We've seen it all. All of us who are educators, there's not a whole lot of detentions that changed anybody. What really changes them is the relationship. Students don't come back and say, thank goodness I got those 3 Saturday detentions, otherwise I'd be a mess. They say, you know who was the best person who helped me through this? Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so. That's not the answer everybody always wants. They want to see somebody hammered, tarred, and feathered, but that doesn't work. So we're really focusing on building the relationship. We're really focusing on having them part of the process, having education, having consequences, but doing it together. Does that answer a little bit of what you want? Okay, thank you.
I saw some hands over here. Yep. Absolutely.
So
So what was addressed is some of these slides made it look appealing. It's advertised as appealing. So what are we doing to kind of educate them about the harms? I can't speak on what Benridge is doing. What I do is I go in, I speak to the groups, assemblies on exactly that dopamine piece and how it can rob you of who you are, who you can be, motivation, what you want to be in 5 years, 10 years. And I talk about nicotine and its harms on the cardiovascular system, the tumor-enhancing effects, trying to combat the misinformation that they're getting from the industry to profit. Is it effective? Psychoeducation is basically brief intervention. You give this little bit of information out there, and it's going to spark with some people. Is it going to spark with everybody? No. I've done assemblies before, and I've talked to some of the young people later down the road, and one youth was like, after your assembly, man, it meant a lot to a lot of us, but I went into the bathroom and there were still like 10 kids vaping, And that's what it is. It's kind of, we're in the spaghetti on the wall mode right now. We're throwing on the wall and seeing what sticks. And my idea is if, our information, the information that's provided to you as parents and teachers, if you can pay it forward and pass it on, we're going to reinforce the 30% of the people who are making the young people who are making the right decisions already. It's going to be reinforcement for them to continue to do so. The other 30 or 40% who are on, maybes, we might increase their perceived level of harm to a point where they decide not to, or at least wait till they're old enough to decide if they want to. And then there's going to be that, 15% fringe behavior who, no matter what you or I say, no matter how stellar an assembly or the speaker is, it means absolutely nothing to them, and they're going to continue that behavior until they experience interference with the quality of their own life. And that is where, as the doctor said, this is where relationships can change people. This is where trust and bonds and pro-social interaction can actually implement change more than any fear factor. Scare tactics don't work. Psychoeducation can, but fear factors don't work. I don't know if I answered your question. Okay. Yeah.
So I just want to sort of ask, from a community standpoint, really looking at how many stores are selling these types of products.
Can you repeat it so they
Yeah. So I just want to ask everybody sort of think about how many of these stores are popping up. I saw the Quakertown when we lived up there, we moved down here. I live on the more rural side of the township, and there was already a place called Dragon Juice or something like that in the J Shopping Center. Now there's a brand new one less than a quarter mile down the road called Sheep. I mean, how many do we need for a square mile in the rural area? So it's like, what's the township doing as far as zoning and checking these people aren't selling stuff within different places? How many do we need before we say we need to put some more zoning laws?
That's a conversation I have with my colleagues every day.
There's more than there is alcohol stores.
There are. So access and perceived level of harm. It's a big business. There are a lot of shops that are making a lot of money at the cost of public health. So to answer your question, what we're doing, one of the things I do is, I'm what's called a commissioned FDA officer. So we send young people in to purchase cigarettes and tobacco products, and now vaping products. And if they have a sale, then we send them a citation. So that does affect the diversion and the sale to minors. However, it doesn't affect the 18 or older individual who goes in and buys for everybody, right? So that's where they're on every corner. It's free market, they have the right to be there. However, how's it impacting our public health? This is a conversation for town hall meetings, for township board members and things like that. Because, yeah, I agree with you. There's too many, and we feel powerless sometimes about that. Again, as it was identified, parental relationships can really, build on decisions that young people make. So, we at home have very clear boundaries, clear expectations, and very clear consequences. Those are the rumble strips we sometimes need. I was a risk-taking young person, but fortunately I had very clear boundaries, and my dad was a very large man, very intimidating voice. So, I stayed within those boundaries most of the times. Yes, sir.
One last question for the school district. Will Penn School District be taking the lead along with Wavertown, start suing these manufacturers?
The question, if you couldn't hear it, was in regards to the Quakertown School Board last Thursday adopted a resolution. There are class action suits against e-cigarette manufacturers, Juul being the biggest of those. So the question was, will Penridge participate in that? We were informed last Wednesday of it, and so I have informed the board, but there's been no gathering of a conversation to have an executive summary to see whether the board will be supporting that or not. So that's something we are considering. We just found out last Wednesday. From that standpoint. I do want to honor the 8 o'clock, although I know Mr. Falco will stay if some of you have specific questions, and it's always socially awkward to say, okay, well, what are we doing? So why don't we thank the presenters, first of all, for I just want to, because we've talked a lot about resources, right? So please have the conversations, right? Or if there's something that doesn't seem right, reach out to somebody, a school, the community resources, right? We are fortunate that there are lots of community resources at our fingertips. There are a lot of school resources. If you're not sure, reach out to a teacher, reach out to a counselor, reach out to a house principal, and let's make those conversations and that decision together, because it really is about education, right? This is something that 2 years ago was totally different in terms of what we knew and what we're learning. And so we really need to make sure that we're learning with our children and making sure that they have the education in terms of what is okay and what isn't, and they hear that from you and they hear that from us. Okay? So thank you for coming tonight. If you have additional questions, just please stick around, and I'm sure